Hello and welcome. Today we have a 2-for-1 special on watch exams because I have not one but two Scurfa watches that we'll be taking a look at. It is a dive-focused microbrand. We'll be looking at the Treasure Seeker, a blue dial, currently on a blue rubber strap, and this ladies model top side crew with white dial, and also on a rubber strap, white in this case. A lot of watch brands try to cultivate an image of being used by divers, though of course pretty much everything is a fashion statement at this point. People aren't using watches to time their dives, but the cool thing about this brand, it is actually founded by a diver, and his initial model was really focused on his experiences and learnings, so there is a good amount of credibility to the dive aspect of the brand. They make some beautiful watches. Regardless, this is not a sponsored video. I just happen to really like these. Continuing with the dive theme, they come in these uniquely shaped cases, which the founder states are larger versions of the cases they get spare parts shipped in. Kind of look like bolts. Simple but cool. Before we take a closer look at these watches, we can just do a quick wrist check. I am wearing the Casio MRW 200H, extremely cost-effective dive-styled watch, also with the white dial. This watch makes an appearance in the Navy Suit for War video, if you have not seen it previously. This is just a cool little watch. These are like $25. So durable, simple, and for a great price. Get a nice looking watch on a resin band. So that is what we are going with today, roughly in theme with the watches we'll be looking at. But let's go ahead and dive in. What's going to happen? On the Treasure Seeker, this beautiful blue dial dive watch, stainless steel, some brushed elements. Alright, so here we have the Treasure Seeker. As I mentioned, this is with a blue dial. So it's a blue bezel insert. We have white markings on both the bezel and the applied markers. Pretty simple dial in terms of printing. Just the Scurfa logo at 12 o'clock, and then it is labeled Treasure Seeker at the 6 o'clock. See, there is a date window, the 3 o'clock position, replacing the 3-hour marker there. There are also second indications printed in white around the dial. And one of the things that really drew me to this watch is the dial itself. It has this hexagonal pattern, little hexagons cut into the dial. I really like the textural element that provides. I really like that they chose hexagons. I think that is very cool, and it really drew me to the look of this watch. I have to say that kind of the vibe I got from this that really drew me in, obviously dive watches have some pretty similar inspirations and stylings, but probably my favorite watch would be the Omega Seamaster. The modern variants with like a white dial are simply incredible to me, but I am a huge fan of the 90s quartz Seamasters, that James Bond era of watch in the navy colorway. You know, if I had rekindled my love for watches a little bit sooner, I probably would have been in a position to get one of those, but I just came back in a little too late and prices had really shot up. But those are super cool, and I love the modern Seamasters, and this watch kind of gave me some of those vibes. Like I said, you know, there's a lot of similar kind of variations on a theme, dive watches, but this one just really hit a nice spot for me. A nice blue bezel with the white markings, triangle with dot at the 12 o'clock position of the dial, or 0 position if you prefer to think of it that way. The watch has a 316L stainless case. As I mentioned, overall it is generally polished with some brushed elements leading into the lugs there off the sides of the watch. It is listed as being 41 millimeters in diameter, so on the larger side, but not the largest diameter, and we'll take some measurements with the caliper here in a bit to see what numbers we get ourselves. Has a double domed sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating, and there is superluminova applied to the dial. You also get lume on the dive bezel insert as well. It has a 120 click unidirectional bezel. Let's go ahead and try that out. It's pretty satisfying. It has these little small cutouts for grip. It's not the grippiest bezel, something that's more knurled that really kind of digs in. Maybe is grippier, but it's a nice style. I don't really have a problem getting a purchase on it, but it is somewhat subtle in terms of how the grip is cut out. Just adjust the focus here for you. Should give you a better view of those little cutouts along the bezel, as well as that brushed area contrasting the polished outer edges of the case. It has a screw down crown, and you will see it has a TS logo for Treasure Seeker. And refocus here so we can see the dial again. Really love the looks of this watch. It is also rated to 300 meters for water resistance, or around 1,000 feet. So a pretty good depth rating there. Inside it has the Miyota 9015 automatic movement. This is a 24 jewel movement, and it can be hand wound. The crown is screwed down as you would expect for a dive watch to help ensure the watch stays watertight at depth. Now, when it comes to the movement, obviously a less expensive movement is what helps keep the prices of these down and make them a more affordable dive watch. I think no issues in terms of the function of the movement or its timekeeping. It does have one drawback that I have to be honest about, though, and I've read that this is a typical issue with this specific movement. So there is a rotor inside, which is what, through motion, will move around inside the watch and wind the spring. That's the automatic winding nature of it. But in the case of this movement, it is quite noisy. Sometimes it's kept me from wearing this in videos because I think the noise might be distracting. Let's just go ahead and see if we hear that. I don't know whether that's overly apparent to you in the recording for how it feels in the room, but it is something I definitely notice in my day-to-day life. It's not crazy loud, but it is enough to be aware of it. So that is one drawback, and I could see that turning people off because it can be a little distracting, and in a perfect world that would be quiet. Still, it has not taken away from me really enjoying the ownership of this watch. So let's flip it over to take a look at the back, because it is pretty awesome. And I'm going to rotate this so we can have a look at this artwork. So on the back, the distinctive element we see on the case back is this artwork of a diver doing some work, and looks like he's connected to a service unit that is providing the oxygen that he needs to do his work. Apparently this is made by an artist named Doc Peterson, who is a diver himself, and thus pretty appropriate to use it on this watch. Have these engraved wave motifs behind the diver here, flippers and helmet. Really nice detail to it, and I think just a really good looking case back image that is very apropos for this watch. We do have some text here engraved on the case back as well. We see Treasure Seeker. We see the depth rating here of 300 meters or 1,000 feet. Automatic movement is indicated on this bottom edge here. And then we have this final piece of text which reads sub-C asset. Interesting. So super cool case back. I really liked the overall fit of this watch in terms of the dial and coloration, and then the artwork on the rear on the case back. The watch is on the rubber strap it comes with. It's the official Scurfa Watches genuine rubber strap. And I just think this is the perfect strap look for this watch. I have never put on the bracelet just because I really like how this goes together. As you may have noticed, I tend to have most of my watches on a softer strap, typically a NATO versus a bracelet. For some watches, I do like the bracelet, but in this case, this is the vibe that I like. I do have the bracelet here, so we can take a look at it. The original crinkly packaging. So here we have the clasp. Pretty straightforward. Push buttons on the side to release. We see Scurfa Watches engraved on the clasp itself. The other portion of the bracelet and you can see these are solid links. This is all a single unit. We don't have individual links pinned together. Keep things simple and cost effective, I would imagine. So it certainly looks nice. I have no real complaints about the styling of it. It does have a small taper to it, so a perfectly serviceable bracelet. However, I choose to go with the rubber strap, because that's what works for me for this watch. Should we get these little link ends in here? The spring bar. Okay. I also haven't tried putting this on a NATO strap either. I really do just like the look and feel with this blue rubber strap on here. I could see trying a NATO at some point just for the fun of seeing what combos might work. But just really do love this watch as is on the rubber strap. Alright, before we move on to the top side crew, I want to grab the calipers and let's take a few measurements of the watch just to get a feel for it. So the published diameter is 41 millimeters. I'm gonna look at the bezel here. So the bezel itself is about 40 millimeters. If we get the case itself, get just over 41 millimeters. And we have some curves along the case, and it's kind of at its widest where the crown guards are. So it depends a bit where you're measuring. The stated diameter is 41 millimeters, and then I'm going to go lug to lug here. And see 49 and a little fraction here, so lug to lug 49 millimeters. 20 millimeters in terms of the strap. And we see that 20 millimeter measurement there. And then let's go ahead and get a height measurement. And I see 12.79. It is labeled as being 12.6 millimeters thick, so right on target there. So those are the measurements of the watch, and it's listed as 164 grams. This wears super well. I really like it. It can feel slightly tall, to be expected kind of with these dimensions, but not overly so, or in any particularly negative way. The only other real negative, which is a very subtle detail, as I mentioned, kind of the small knurling, kind of these little cutouts along the edge. And there's a tiny bit of sharp feeling to it if you run your hands around it. Say that helps with grip, but you do kind of feel like a little just metallic sharpness. Which isn't the best tactile feeling, but it's not an issue in everyday wear or use, just kind of a nitpicking piece of it. But yeah, that may play a role in getting your grip there. So that is the Treasure Seeker 41 millimeter dive watch from Scurfa Watches. Absolutely a beloved timepiece of mine. So let us now take a look at another model from the same company, the Topside Crew. And as mentioned, I have this in white dial, white rubber strap. This did not come with an alternative strap option, it's only on the rubber. And as I mentioned, this is a ladies' watch. Seems a bit of a silly distinction, but I wanted a smaller watch and wanted the white dial. So this absolutely fit the bill. So I went ahead and picked one up. Alright, let's get focused on the dial there, since due to the way the rubber strap sits, this won't sit flat on my table here. So this has some similar design elements to the Treasure Seeker that we just looked at. A little bit smaller in overall dimension. Tends to be the case with a ladies' watch, but also it is not a full dive watch in the sense that it doesn't have a rotating bezel. We just have a fixed stainless steel bezel there on top of a stainless steel case, which, like the Treasure Seeker we just looked at, has a blend of polished elements and brushed stainless steel. This has a double domed sapphire crystal and grade A super luminova on the applied markers and hands for visibility underwater or in the dark. I'll see if I can get a loom shot. I don't know that we'll be able to do that. We see the Scurfa Watches logo again at the 12 o'clock position. And we again see Treasure Seeker at the 6 o'clock position. So the connection between these two from a design perspective is intentional, both called the Treasure Seeker and this variant designated as the top side crew. This has a white dial, white markers in black frames, same with the hands, white with the black edge, a black second hand, and again we have printed seconds around the edge of the dial and the hexagonal design motif to give texture to the dial. And there is a date window at the 3 o'clock position as well. A matte white hexagonal embossed dial. The watch also has a screw down crown and also is labeled TS for Treasure Seeker, like the other watch. I find this dial to be quite legible. An interesting comparison. Let me go ahead and take off the watch that I'm wearing because it makes for an interesting comparison. Stylistically, the hands of these two watches are almost identical. You have black trimmed white hands, almost exactly the same second hand design. Have more of a sword hand for the hour hand on the Casio. But for two very similar minute hands, I can very easily read the Scurfa topside crew, and I often find myself struggling to read the minutes on the Casio. It is one drawback of this watch. I think it is because the black trim is so fine, and probably with my aging eyes, that it blends in a little bit and can sometimes be ambiguous with the second hand at a glance. So I usually have to hunt a little to clearly identify the minute hand on the Casio, whereas I don't have the same problem on the top side crew. So I think a very subtle craft and design has made that work, but props to the Scurfa design for being highly legible when a very similar watch I have is not necessarily. So I love the Casio, but that is one small issue that I have with it. The flip side, of course, being it is a super cheap watch. All right. So I have kept this on its white rubber strap. I'm very happy with it and the overall look. 18mm strap for this. Again, it is the official Scurfa Watches genuine rubber strap. Let's take a look at our case back here. Simpler artwork, but again, very appropriate nautical theme. Anchor with the rope curled around it. We see Treasure Seeker in text. This topside crew is rated to 200 meters or 660 feet of depth. We always prefer that extra 6 feet to give us 666 feet if we're going down to visit with Davy Jones in the dark depths. Swiss movement, which I will discuss in one moment. And then again, we're going to see top side crew, the model here, as well as the Treasure Seeker designation. Perfect watch if you're going after some sunken treasure. Grab our focus here. Macro lens to make sure you can see the details. Now, movement is different. In this watch, we have a quartz movement instead of an automatic. For the price and size, totally fine. Very easy to work with on a day-to-day basis. Don't have to worry about it. Is the Swiss Ronda 715 SM movement. Just a simple quartz movement with date. Very functional. And this watch is great just for having a smaller, lighter watch. Great to go to the beach. Obviously, it's got a good depth rating, and I really like the styling of it when I want something a little smaller than the full dive watch. So let's take a couple quick measurements. So let's take a look at the outer bezel diameter here, 36.95. They state 37 millimeters from the 20 to the 50 markings, getting clear of the crown for that measurement. So basically 37 millimeter in diameter. Let's go lug to lug. I get 44.52 millimeters. It is listed as 44 millimeters. And a quick look at the overall thickness that we have here. So 9.89 millimeters. We listed 10 millimeter thickness. Right in line there. And then the strap really takes up the entire dimension in here. But it is an 18 millimeter width here for the strap. Okay, so that is a look at the top side crew and the Treasure Seeker watch. Two takes on the Treasure Seeker as we looked at from Scurfa Watches. Again, I'm just a fan of these two watches. I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at them with me. I've definitely been very pleased with my ownership of these two. So, really cool brand that's been around. I think Their first watches came out in 2013. Their Diver 1 model, which is a highly functional dive watch. I haven't checked one of those out, but designed for kind of simple utility. And then, as I said, I just really appreciate these two, the Treasure Seeker in blue and the Topside Crew in white. I hope you've enjoyed taking this look at these two Scurfa watches with me, and I hope you have a wonderful night.